So I'm Monica Callahan. I am one of the board of directors for Alliance of Therapy Dogs. And we put together this webinar today to help empower our members a little bit more to feel empowered to stand up for their dogs and give you different ideas on how you can go about doing that to make sure that our dogs are our first priorities and that we keep them and everyone that we visit safe. So the chat area, you can go ahead and enter where you're from, say hello. If you have a question during the webinar, there is a section called Q&A that we do want the questions to go into to get answered. We do have a couple other board of directors, including our president and our vice president and our secretary, and Amy, our executive director. They're keeping an eye on the Q&As for us, and they will go ahead and answer them. You may get directed to ask your question in the Q&A if you do put it in the chat. So just keep that in mind. There is a separate Q&A section. All right, so today we're going to talk about advocating for our dogs, and what that looks like and how you can do it, and maybe some ideas you haven't thought about before when it comes to advocating for our dog. So again, questions are going to go in Q&A. Chat is just to say hello. If you don't see it on your screen, go ahead and move your cursor to the edge of the screen and it should appear for you. Sometimes Zoom can be a little funky for us. All right, so how can I be the best possible advocate for my dog? And what does that look like? Asking people, both children and adults, to wait and take turns. It is okay to ask people to say, hold on, can I have this person pet my dog? And then go ahead and ask the next person to pet my dog after. And this can even be done for children and the adults that are with them too. So this is one of our therapy dogs at the Myrtle Beach Airport. Her name is Indy. And Erin does a really good job about making sure that she is down with Indy, getting pet by a child, and then the mom is actually behind her, also waiting to pet Indy. So Erin is down there. She has her hand right by Indy in case she needs to help guide Indy when interacting with the child. And encouraging people to stay out of your dog's face and be polite. And this is a big one for therapy dogs because everyone wants to get in our dogs' faces. So it's important to nicely encourage people to stay out of our dogs' faces and help your dog be successful by setting them up and letting people know that we can't allow our dogs to give kisses while on visits. So this is me saying hello to Belle.
Would you like to say hi to my dog? Sure. Oh, no kisses. She's a little big for that.
So a hand underneath the chin can do a lot to help guide your dog and where they can be positioned to get pet. And you can also give them that curve and it gives the back to be more pet by the person instead of just bringing them in face to face with the dog. And this is a big one if your dogs do want to go ahead and give facial kisses. Setting your dogs up for success and helping them position correctly is going to go a long way for them.
Would you like to say?
So do not ask your dog to tolerate poor human behavior. If you think your dog is nervous or worried, give them a break. If it becomes increasingly negative or questionable, it's important to leave the visit or the situation. And I have a couple stories that I do want to share here about this. And there are definitely levels that you can do and before you get to the point of feeling that you have to leave. So recently we were visiting at the airport and I was passing someone that had a disability and I knew just by the vocalizations that he was making that Oreo might struggle with him a little bit if we were to get stopped by him and his mom. And so then when I was on my way back, we did end up getting stopped by then. So I did let Oreo approach and I was down there. I had my hand on her collar to help her. And she was fine as he kind of bent down a little bit to say hello. And then he did do some vocalizations because he couldn't speak very well. And I could immediately see Oreo's ears kind of go back. She, looked at me and gave me a little bit of whale eye. So I knew she was pretty uncomfortable at that point. So at that point, I asked her to move away. And I kind of got her on the side of me while I was talking about them. And I asked if they had any dogs. And so they were talking to me about their dogs. And then he did try to reapproach her. And at that point, I knew she was still a little questionable. So then I asked if he wanted to see some tricks. And then he got very excited. So we showed him some tricks and talked a little bit more about his dog. And then once that was done, he tried to reapproach. And so I did give him her back because at that point she had settled down a little bit and had become comfortable with the tricks. So she did let him pet his back, but I did make sure to keep her face away from him because he really wanted to go in towards her face. So once he got another pet or two in, I did remove her again. And then he kept talking to us. And then I asked if he wanted a trading card, which got him very excited. So we gave him the trading card. And then by that point, they were okay to leave because they didn't necessarily want to move on yet. So that was kind of my approach of giving her those breaks that she needed and making sure I set her up for success because I knew she wouldn't have been able to handle it and she would have been really uncomfortable. And I didn't want to hurt the person's feelings by him seeing Oreo, slink away and get nervous around him. So it set everyone up for success and we ended up having a really nice visit. And I think they really appreciated that. But I was also able to stand up for my dog and make sure that she was comfortable as well. So it's important the more you hear about it that you can come up with those little ways like, hey, if this happens to my dog, I can go ahead and do this. And so people sometimes wonder why our therapy dogs might, they might want to learn some tricks, and that's an option for them. Even if it's something really simple that your dog can do. It could be, hey, do you want to see my dog, sit and lay down? People usually get excited by simple things like that. So think of those ways that you can put those in there if you do start to see your dogs get a little nervous. Positioning both with humans and other teams for photos. So this is Indy and Oreo. They are 2 feet apart. I measured here. We both still have the leashes and we were both still able to get a really nice photo together. So 2 feet is not as big as many people think, but it is enough space that our dogs can feel comfortable. And I know Oreo is comfortable with the 2 feet because she knows Indy. If she did not know this dog, I would feel comfortable advocating for my dogs to ask for more space. If I don't know the team that I'm visiting with, I will always at least have 4 to 6 feet between dogs because I know that's what makes me comfortable and it's what makes my dog comfortable and I can focus better on the visit. So just because our rule is 2 feet, never be afraid to advocate for your dog and ask for more if you need it. So this is Indian Oreo visiting at the airport. There's probably about 3 to 4 feet between them here. And it does give the flight attendant enough space to even pet Indy if she wanted to reach over and still pet Indy and Oreo at the same time. So nice space. Even if Oreo turned her head there, they're still apart more than 2 feet. So positioning both with humans and other teams for petting. And this is also setting your dog up for success and knowing, those behaviors they like to do with people. And if they're not necessarily the best behaviors to have, how can you set your dog up for success? So this is Lori and Dolly. And Dolly, if people sit next to her, she does like to try to climb in their laps because she loves to snuggle. So Lori does a good job about helping Dolly, and she is an older dog, so she moves very slowly, get out of or prevent her from getting into someone's lap, which is me.
Oh, hey, how about we come over here and sit instead of sitting on your lap? Can you come this way? She's like, oh, this way. Good girl.
So that is a little way that she helps Dolly be successful on her visits. And I did want to have our executive director pop in here, Amy. She has Leroy, who's a Doberman, and he likes to do a certain behavior. So she sets him up for success to make sure that he doesn't practice it on his visit.
Yes, my 95-pound Doberman really likes to, if he's facing someone, he likes to offer his paw to them. And it's not a good behavior on visits. It's often how accidental scratches happen or are reported to our office. So in order to prevent him from doing that, I often keep him standing. He prefers to stand over sit anyways. So when we approach people, I keep him in a standing position. And then I often will come around and so that he and the person he's visiting are both facing the same direction. By putting him next to the person instead of facing the person, the tendency to offer his paw isn't as great. And so I often do that positioning for him because I don't want him to offer his paw, because even with really well-groomed nails, a very large paw coming at someone's forearm or their hand can cause a scratch. I also don't encourage the behavior as a trick because I don't want him to get more anxious at offering his paw when he goes to visit people. So we don't do shake. We don't do anything like that with Leroy because that's me advocating for him to help ensure that I don't cause an incident or injury to someone. Is just knowing his behavior and making sure I do the best to avoid it. I do have experience in working with the Alliance of Therapy Dogs office, and a lot of people do have dogs that do shake or high five. We encourage often that they do that with the handler themselves to kind of show off the trick, but to not encourage the dog to do it to patients that might have thin skin or young children that might not be paying attention to the paw coming at them. So those are a couple things. If your dog has that same tendency to offer their paw to someone, to position them going the same direction as the individual, to have them do the trick to the handler instead of the person you're visiting, and it can avoid some injuries.
Lovely. All right, so positioning both with humans and other teams, controlling your head. And this is a big one that ATD has really focused on this year. You know, our dogs, they love to go in head first, but it's really important that we're an active member. Yes, people want to visit our dogs, but it's also really important that they remember that we're there too. So I am a big advocate, especially for children, of being down there, having my hand on the collar, having my hand under the chin to visit. And because people can stick their faces in your dog's face in a split second. And so you don't want to be 5 seconds behind someone because you're at the end of your leash 4 feet back. So never be afraid to be a part of the visit. Yes, there are certain times where maybe you want to be a little bit back because it's a very solemn, quiet moment with your dog. But you should still always be there monitoring, always having an eye on your dog and making sure that you're actively watching and being proactive. Know your dog. So this is Rowan with his cart, and this was Kim's, our president's dog, and she knew that he was pretty much done with their visit because he laid down, which is not something he would normally do in his crate or his cart. So she knew at that point that things were getting a little exhausting for him, and it was time for him to go. And then she also shared with us this photo of Zach and Tucker. Tucker was just Zach too, a brand new team. And this was actually the first time Tucker had been interacting with a child. So I love that Zach got down there with him. He has a hand up near his collar. I love that the mom is giving the child what we call guided touch, to make sure that she is actively watching the hand to make sure that the child doesn't grab at him. And it was kept nice, short, sweet, and they kind of went on their way. So it set Tucker and Zach up for success. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to pop them in the Q&A. I think we might try to do a few live, but I think that our board of directors here have been doing a good job answering them. Remember that the chat function is just to say hello in. Any questions should head to the Q&A. If you have any other questions, you can always head to our website. We have a news section which has some lovely blog articles in it. You can find a ton of information underneath members. or in your portal. So we have things like our body language handout, forms that you might need. You can also find a lot of information on our Facebook and Instagram and our YouTube page. And of course, if you have any really pressing questions or questions that do not have to deal with this topic today, you can go ahead and always contact our office. There is their email and their phone number. They are in Cheyenne, Wyoming, so keep business hours in mind. So they may have to get back to you.
And I was just going to jump in and add, if you encounter a situation where you weren't quite sure how to handle advocating for your dog, but you want to do better the next time, send a question to the office. We can often provide some coaching. And if we don't have the experience to respond to the question directly, we will always reach out to our board of directors, who are all handlers, tester observers, and members with many years of experience, and they can often share some stories or insight that would help you. I have never received anything in the office where someone says, I advocated for my dog and I wish I hadn't, but we have often heard, I knew I should have and I didn't. So always err on the side of caution, step in when you think you might need to, and you will be glad you did. A lot of times people said, I knew I should have left the visit 10 minutes before I did. And in that last 10 minutes is when the dog lost their patience and behaved badly in some way because they were just worn out. It's not the dog's fault. We just really need to be attentive to these dogs. We're asking them to do a lot to represent therapy dogs. And if we need to cut our visit short and it might make someone's day a little sad that they didn't get to interact with your dog, you can come back another day. But if you stay too long and an incident occurs, it might be the end of their therapy dog career, and it's something that can be prevented.
Yeah.
Monica, there was a couple of questions about small dogs and advocating for small dogs. People seem to always want to hold a small dog, carry them around. What do you suggest?
Always remember that they don't have to pick up your dog. And actually, I usually would recommend, if you are going to let someone hold your dog, I have one dog who is 18 pounds, very slim. She's a sight hound, so she can be picked up. But I would never let someone in a visit. And I know that's different for everybody. But consider handing them to someone, and because your hand should still be there if they are on someone's lap. So you should be right by them anyways. But never be afraid to ask someone to get down on their level. Hey, sometimes we get a little worried when people crouch over us. Would you mind coming down here with me to say hello? Or bringing them up on a level. I've loved seeing all our smaller dogs at the airport visit in strollers. I think they are a great addition to a visit. And I've considered getting one for my dog, even though she's kind of medium sized, just because it brings her up and people are going to be less likely to lean over them. But yes, don't be afraid to say, hey, how about we try this? Or my dog really likes to be scratched here. I know Lori with Belle loves being scratched under her chin. And so she does the best she can to say, hey, instead of reaching over the head, can we try to reach under the head? But yeah, remember, they are your dogs. They don't have to be picked up by other people. I actually usually recommend not picking them up by people they don't know, just to keep them safe. Because sometimes, we accidentally grab somewhere and they might yelp a little bit. But yeah, for sure.
And what about you do work in a busy airport. How do you advocate when you're in a busy, crowded situation?
Generally, I try to back her away from larger crowds if I start to think that they're getting a little too busy. I know it's probably been said before, but something that can be used too. I remember Lori kind of brought me into therapy dog work. And one of the big things she always told me is, if you find yourself in a situation and you can't get out, never be afraid to say, hey, I think my dog has to go to the bathroom, because most people aren't going to argue with that. But yeah, don't be afraid to also say, I kind of do a lot of gentle body blocking for people as well. If they start to kind of crowd around my dog, I will kind of, move her a little bit. So I'm kind of cutting off the pathway a little bit so that they're a little more focused inwards. And I find that most people, especially in airports, I suppose, want to give people a little bit more space. So they might just naturally kind of hang back until that person leaves and then kind of come in. Sometimes I do run into a little bit of issues with children wanting to crowd a little bit. But I will generally always face Oreo's face towards me, or Hip Hop, whoever I'm visiting with, so that she's staring at me so I can make eye contact with her. I have a hand near her collar, and that kind of leaves the back open for the kids to pet. And sometimes it's not as exciting for them, so they may kind of hang back a little bit and wait their turn a little bit.
Monica,
Mhm.
kind of along the same line, can you answer, someone had asked that, what if someone's talking, say, at a couple high octaves higher to see their dogs? How do you politely ask them to, to not be so loud because it excites their dog, thinks it wants to play? Any recommendations on that?
Yeah, so generally I will call them towards me and get them a little more excited to look at me. And then I might ask someone to be like, hey, I don't want her to jump on you. So would you mind talking a little quieter to her? And if we go in a little slower, she's going to calm down a little bit. And generally you will run into the people that do want to be jumped on. But a lot of times they may not want to be jumped on. So if you kind of bring in like, hey, if we get them excited, they might jump, they will kind of calm down. But if they're, oh, we don't mind jumping, I generally say, oh, I'm sorry, it's not allowed by our therapy dog organization, so I can't allow her to do that. And so don't be afraid to blame ATD. Oreo tends to want to be a licker. So I always blame that and say, oh, she can't give facial kisses. Our organization doesn't allow it. I'm sorry.
I was going to jump in on that too. One of the places we visit is the local jail, and a lot of the guys really want to rub their hands on my dog's shoulders and get him kind of hyped up. And he does like to play like that at home. And so I will say, Leroy, come get him a little bit closer to me, just as Monica said, distract him towards you. And then I have to state to the guys in there, I don't want my therapy dog roughhousing. I know that he would love to play with you that way, but it's not appropriate on a therapy dog visit. And sometimes it's helpful to advocate at the facility level. If it's someplace you regularly visit, you could ask them to display the rules to the people you're visiting. So at the Laramie County Jail, they have some information that goes up on their screens every day that we visit, and it now lists, please do not give the therapy dog kisses, please do not put your face in the therapy dog's face, and do not try to roughhouse with the therapy dog. So it's sometimes nice so that you don't have to repeat yourself to every person you engage with, if the facility can help you advocate for the rules that you're incurring on a common basis and that you're having to say over and over again to people. So don't feel bad asking the facility to help you advocate for your dog and set them up for success, because it does sometimes get very repetitive if you're going from individual to individual and they're all doing the same pattern of behavior.
And a lot of people at the facilities are not afraid to tell the rules.
Monica, do you have any favorite tricks that you like to do on visits or recommend?
Well, Oreo's a Dalmatian, so we always have the stop, drop, and roll. But we've worked really hard on our sit pretty. She really likes to do that one. And I like that one too, because I tend to find if I work on it enough, she kind of defaults into it rather than potentially wanting to jump up. So if people have hands up or, are eating or anything like that, and we're by them or something, she's more likely to pop into a sit up rather than a jump. So if you have a dog that does have the potential to want to jump if they get excited, that might not be a bad one to teach them. Some of mine are really good at take a bow. So that one's always a cute one. People love that. And then I always find that even as something as simple as turning in a circle can make people think that it's an amazing trick that was so hard to teach. And they always smile at that one.
Thank you. I'll add one, though my crew traditionally doesn't do tricks. For those dogs that do paw or shake, if I know, especially those who do not want to interact, if you just have them raise a paw, it's an easy way to tell them to say hello or say goodbye.
Yeah.
One of the best ways to advocate for your dog is to know your audience and know your dog. So just because they're therapy dogs doesn't mean they're comfortable in every situation. And no matter how much you might want to visit at a library or a school, if your dog isn't comfortable there, then it's best to find a different venue that both you and your dog can be happy with.
I do see Catherine Morris had asked for examples of higher energy settings, and I will say the airport can be very high energy, and Oreo can be a very high energy dog. And we do a ton of visits with first responders and college students, and she generally will be the same way. I might have to help her face me a little bit more because she might get a little excited and want to turn around and try to give them kisses. But we do a lot of more focused. I might even ask her for a chin rest on my hand facing me. So I do a lot of trying to get her to curve. And she does really well with it. And that's actually a really good cue to me that she's getting tired because she will want to curve away from people less and less. So that lets me know that she's starting to get tired if she keeps wanting to go more face in towards the people. But she's a high energy dog. We've just worked really, really hard on that. And generally, you know, the more people get excited around her, the more I ask her to focus on me rather than them. Because if they're getting really excited, I find that they're less worried about the attention that she's giving them, and they just want to put hands on her. Generally, they want that more, you know, eye contact attention when things are a little bit quieter. So when it's a higher energy visit, I just ask for more attention from her. And don't give her as much freedom to make choices around those people and just try to advocate for her a little bit more.
And keeping your dog well exercised, if you know they're high energy before going into the visit, is also good. Monica runs with her dog, so she gets lots of exercise. But if you know you're going into a visit with young children and your dog's high energy, make sure you go into that visit with a little bit of their energy burned off so that they have their best behavior for the visit.
Yeah. Let's see. I see Don's answering the last question in there. But I suppose if we're running out of
Monica, go ahead and answer it publicly.
Okay. I have found a snuggle ball very entertaining for young and old, owner placing treats or kibble in ball. And yeah, that's a super fun idea. Obviously this year we implemented the not allowing other people to give our dogs treats. But that doesn't mean that they cannot fill a dog toy, or a snuffle mat or something like that, put it down on the ground, and then our dogs can go to it and use it.
Monica, um, this is something I think a lot of people have run into. I know a lot of teams I've worked with have asked, but ways to help dogs that want to lick too much.
That's Oreo. Honestly, it's just really working on teaching her how to go in and then turn towards me to give the back. I use her name a lot, so I'm always making sure outside that when I'm training with her outside of visits that I'm always reinforcing her name so that she is super responsive to it. Because if I see her trying to go in there, I just call her name and then she will usually turn and look at me, and it kind of breaks that initial, you know, they make eye contact, and she just wants to go in there, call her name, she'll generally turn and look at me, and then that sets her up for getting her back pet instead. But that's also a really good place for me to get my hands on my dog's head and scratch there too, as someone else is petting her to help her be successful and not get that lick in there. So I think with that, it's just a lot of practice and working that way.
Monica, I did answer it in the questions, but someone had asked about what are good first responders to visit. Given the involvement I know you have with first responders. You might want to add to that or just comment on.
Yeah, I didn't see what you wrote, but I've pretty much seen a lot of different places. I've even seen, I know Jared up in Michigan has been, I think he's just been dropping into fire stations and asking if they wanted to visit. But firefighters, police departments, you might want to get in contact with someone before just showing up because they're usually in and out a lot more. But I know the dispatchers really enjoy it if you can get in with them. But even places that we don't think about, if your EMS is separate than fire, you have your EMS stations as well. Trying to think, but those are all kind of good places. I usually try to look for, especially a lot of fire departments and things like that. They have, usually now they have like a person in charge of their events or things like that. So I usually try to get in touch with them to see if they want to set up a visit. But I think even the police departments are starting to have more of your events people too.
I wanted to comment real quick on Deborah's statement. I deal with dementia people and learned they have a tendency to grab and not be able to release their grip. We've seen that several times where they'll grab the leash, they'll grab the collar. Sometimes in that situation, what I've done is had a second leash that they can hold on. And then I can just, if they're not going to release it, I can unclip it. My dog is safe. I've got a leash on them, and then often staff will get the second leash back for me. But then I'm not in a fight with it, and my dog is safe.
Mm-hmm. That's a good idea. All right. Well, I think we're hitting the end of our time. I don't know if any of our other board of directors have anything else they want to add.
I don't have anything to add. I just really appreciate those that attended, and I'm excited that the office has another resource to share with old and new members, because I think giving examples is much easier than just reading a rule in the handbook and understanding how it applies. I think having all these examples that we've listed and shown speak a lot more to our membership and will give them a lot of good references to look back on, because advocating for your therapy dog or your dog in general, I think is a very important part of our role as handlers.
Agreed.
I'd just like to thank everyone for coming.
Alrighty. If anyone has any other questions, feel free to, you can either ask on our Instagram or Facebook or email the office. They are usually pretty quick to respond. Sometimes probably even quicker than anywhere else. But yeah, they're always willing to talk to everyone. So feel free to give them a call or an email if you have any other questions. And thank you for attending tonight.